They showed up at my barbecue empty-handed and tried to walk off with all the meat. Subscribe to the channel and share your stories in the comments. And now let's get started. My name is Linda Parker. I am 66 years old, and for the last 5 years I have lived as a maid in my own house. A house by the lake in North Carolina that I built with my own 2 hands, paid for with every overtime hour, every dollar saved, every dream postponed. It was supposed to be my sanctuary. A place where mornings smelled of pine and fresh coffee, where evenings meant sunsets bleeding into the water, a reward after decades of work. I had imagined grandchildren running across the porch, laughter bouncing off the water, a family table filled with warmth. Instead, my house became my cage and I, its unpaid servant. It began quietly, almost invisibly, when my son Ethan married Brooke. At first, I tried to welcome her with open arms. She was young, beautiful, ambitious, the kind of woman who knew how to walk into a room and command attention. She wore her hair in sleek waves, always polished, her nails perfect, her perfume faint but expensive. I thought, good. Ethan has chosen well. He will have a partner who lifts him up. But the lift was only one way. From the moment she crossed my doorstep as his wife, I was pushed downward. It began with little things. Linda, could you bring me a glass of water? She asked on her very first weekend in the house, as if I were staff. Not Mom, not could you please, not even would you mind. Just Linda, her voice smooth as glass, as though the roles had already been written and I was cast as the help. That first time I told myself not to mind. She was new, perhaps nervous, maybe unsure how to address me. I brought the water. She didn't say thank you. Instead, she glanced at Ethan with a smile that said, "See? Your mother understands her place." From then on, it became habit. Linda, could you make coffee? Linda, can you iron this blouse? Linda, we're having guests tonight. You'll take care of the menu, right? The words weren't loud. They weren't cruel on the surface. But the tone, the clipped, expectant tone of command, cut deeper than any shout could. I was no longer Mom in my own home. I was Linda the helper. Ethan, my son, watched it happen. At first, I waited for him to speak, to say, "Don't talk to my mother like that." He never did. He looked away, fiddled with his phone or offered weak excuses. "Brooke's just stressed. She's juggling a lot. Don't take it personally, Mom." But silence is consent. And his silence carved me out of my rightful place. The humiliations grew one by one, like drops of water hollowing stone. When guests came over, I cooked elaborate meals. Roast chicken with rosemary, fresh cornbread, pecan pie still warm from the oven. I watched as Brooke placed each dish on the table, smiling proudly, as if she had made it herself. Yes, it was a lot of work, she would sigh dramatically when praised, her manicured hand resting on Ethan's arm. They applauded her. And I stood in the kitchen washing the pans, invisible. Sometimes when I served coffee, she would lean back, stretch her legs and say lightly, "Linda makes the best coffee, doesn't she? She's had so much practice." The guests laughed, thinking it was a joke. But I heard the blade in it. Practice, as if coffee was my skill, my only contribution, while she was the queen presiding over her kingdom. The house I had paid for became her stage. The living room I had decorated with care turned into the backdrop for her curated life. Instagram-perfect dinners, family portraits where I stood slightly out of frame. Even the furniture I bought, she rearranged without asking, announcing it as upgrades. One summer afternoon, I overheard her on the phone with a friend. She walked past me in the hallway, not lowering her voice. "Yes, we live in Ethan's family house. It's lovely, really. A bit old-fashioned, but I'm slowly making it mine." Mine. I stood frozen in the hallway, the groceries heavy in my arms. My house, built on the bones of my years, had become a prize she claimed as her own. For 5 years I bore it. 5 years of unpaid labor. Cooking, cleaning, ironing, setting tables, watching Brooke play the gracious hostess while I scrubbed. 5 years of Ethan brushing off my hurt with, "Don't make things difficult, Mom. She just has a strong personality." I told myself it was for the sake of family peace. That poisonous phrase. How many women have swallowed their pride, their dignity, their very voices for family peace? It is not peace. It is surrender. But the cracks inside me widened. There was the night of Ethan's birthday when Brooke made a toast. She clinked her glass, raised it high and said, To my husband, the hardest working man I know. And to myself, who keeps this house running smoothly. Laughter followed applause. I sat at the far end of the table, my hands folded, my lips pressed tight. She never mentioned the woman who had cleaned and cooked all day to make that celebration possible. Or the Christmas Eve when she announced in front of Ethan's colleagues, "I always go all out for the holidays. I love making everything perfect." Behind her, the tree glowed with lights I had strung, the ornaments I had polished, the table laid with dishes I had spent 2 days preparing. And she beamed as if it were all hers. Each moment was a small cut. And small cuts over years bleed you dry. I began to notice how she looked at me. Not with hatred, not even with dislike. That would have been easier to bear. No, she looked at me with indifference, the way one looks at a useful object. I was the coffee maker, the cook, the cleaner. My name was not Linda. It was function. The worst part was not Brooke. It was Ethan. My boy. My son whom I had raised alone after his father died young. I worked double shifts, skipped meals so he could eat, wore old coats so he could have decent ones for school. I held him when nightmares woke him, told him he could be anything he dreamed. 4 years it was just the two of us, a fortress built on love and sacrifice. And now that boy, my boy, let his wife reduce me to a servant in my own home. I told myself he was blind, that he didn't see it. That men don't notice these small humiliations. But he noticed. He chose silence. Silence is a weapon too, sharper than words. One winter morning, as I bent over to mop spilled wine from the hardwood floor, my knees aching, my back screaming, Brooke and Ethan laughed in the living room about some trivial joke. They didn't pause, didn't notice me on my knees cleaning their mess. And in that moment, the truth struck me so clear it felt carved into the floorboards. Duty without respect is abuse. The words burned into me. They hollowed me out, then filled me with a cold determination. From that day I stopped excusing. I stopped pretending that family peace was worth my dignity. And I began to plan. Not with screaming. Not with tears. Those would only feed her satisfaction, confirm her power. No, my revenge would be quiet, deliberate, absolute. Boundaries written in stone. Because I had learned the hardest truth. Love given without respect becomes servitude. And servitude, once seen clearly, can never be accepted again. It was a Tuesday morning in early December, the lake still silver with frost, the house quiet except for the creak of wood as I moved through the kitchen. I was rinsing mugs, my hands raw from the cold water, when the front door burst open without a knock. Brooke came sweeping in like she owned the place, a red dress clinging to her body, heels clicking sharp against the floor. Her lipstick was perfect, her perfume heavy, and her face already set in the expression of someone announcing news rather than asking permission. "Linda," she said, tossing her coat over the arm of my chair as though it were a hanger, 25 of my relatives are coming here for Christmas. You'll handle everything." It wasn't a request. It wasn't even a discussion. It was an order, delivered in the same tone one might use with a hotel concierge. I remember the way the words rang in the air. 25 relatives. My kitchen, my dining room, my pantry. All transformed into the backdrop of her performance. I could already picture it. Her parading around in sequins, her family praising the feast, the credit falling on her as though she had stirred a single pot. And me sweating over the stove, cleaning, carrying, invisible once again. She stood there, her hand on her hip, waiting for the usual nod of obedience. I dried my hands on a towel and looked her straight in the eye. My voice came out calm, even steady. "Perfect," I said. "But I won't be here." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Her eyes widened, her smile faltered. For the first time in years I saw her caught off guard. "What?" she snapped, her tone brittle. "I won't be here," I repeated. "So if you're hosting 25, you'll need to handle it. Or hire someone." Her mouth tightened into a thin line. "Ethan won't allow this." Allow. As though I were a child asking permission. Later that evening, Ethan came home. He found me sitting at the table with a cup of tea, my notes for grocery shopping untouched beside me. His voice carried that rehearsed patience men use when they want their mothers to bend. "Mom," he began, rubbing the back of his neck, "I heard what you told Brooke. You're overreacting. Can't you just postpone your trip? Christmas is important. You know Brooke has her career, she's networking, this matters to her." You don't want to ruin it. His words poured out smoothly, but beneath them I could hear the truth. They needed me. Not as a mother. Not as family. As unpaid staff. Ethan, I said, my voice low but sharp enough to cut. This is my house. If you want to host 25 people, you can. But you'll be the ones cooking, cleaning, paying. Not me. If you'd like, I can recommend a catering service. The word paying froze him. I saw it in his face. The subtle flicker of panic at the thought of spending real money. For years he had grown used to my labor, my fridge, my time, all free. To him free was natural, owed. Mom, don't make this harder than it has to be, he muttered. But for the first time in years I did not bend. I did not apologize. I sipped my tea, the steam fogging my glasses, and said, if you want a perfect Christmas, hire it. I'm done. He stared at me as though I had spoken another language. His silence, usually my prison, was suddenly my power. The next days were thick with tension. Brooke tried new tactics. She hovered in the kitchen, her voice sickly sweet. Linda, think of how far everyone is traveling. Tickets are already bought. It would be cruel to cancel now. They're counting on us. As though we were partners in this scheme, not captor and captive. But her eyes betrayed her. There was no kindness in them, no real appeal. There was calculation. She needed the show to go on, needed the house polished, the feast abundant, the illusion intact. And she needed me to do it. I said nothing. I kept my hands busy scrubbing the counters, locking my silence around me like armor. At night, when I lay in bed, I thought about the decades I had given to Ethan. The years of sacrifice, of working 2 jobs after his father died, of scraping together money for his education, of going without so he could have more. I had built him a foundation out of my own bones. And now, he handed me over to Brooke's commands as if I were disposable. That Tuesday when I told Brooke I wouldn't be here, something shifted. For 5 years I had been silent. That day my silence ended. And though their faces showed shock, anger, even fear, mine carried something stronger, resolve. This was the first line drawn. The first wall raised. The first boundary that would not be erased. Brooke did not take my refusal lightly. She was too invested in appearances, too skilled in turning manipulation into theater. After that Tuesday her tone shifted. Gone was the command. In its place came guilt, the soft chains mothers know too well. Linda, she said one evening, slipping into the kitchen as I was rinsing vegetables, think of the effort my relatives have already made. They've bought tickets, they've rearranged their schedules. Canceling now would make me look irresponsible. Don't you want them to feel welcome? Don't you want Ethan to shine in front of Uncle Victor? Uncle Victor. The name hung heavy. I had heard it before, always spoken with reverence. A wealthy man from Texas, self-made, with the kind of money Brooke salivated over. And then there was Scott, her brother-in-law, knee-deep in real estate schemes. Brooke wanted to dazzle them both, to secure funds for her dream apartment, to funnel support into Ethan's floundering business. This wasn't about Christmas. It was about currency, both social and financial. And I was the coin she intended to spend. I kept chopping the carrots, the knife steady against the board. Your relatives are not my responsibility, I said evenly. If you want a showcase, arrange it yourself. Her smile trembled. For once she had no ready comeback. But I knew she wouldn't stop. Brooke never stopped when money dangled before her. The first time I truly saw her hunger was months earlier, at a barbecue I had organized by the lake. It was a hot July afternoon, cicadas buzzing, the smell of charcoal thick in the air. I had bought 30 pounds of steak, marinated overnight, carefully prepared side dishes, potato salad, baked beans, corn on the cob. I had envisioned a family gathering, simple and joyful. When Brooke arrived with her mother, they carried nothing. No dessert, no drinks, not even a loaf of bread. Just purses slung over their shoulders and hungry smiles. I swallowed my irritation. But by the end of the evening my patience collapsed. While I was still tending the grill, I glanced toward the porch and froze. Brooke and her mother were filling bags, my bags from my pantry, with steaks meant for the guests. Raw meat, cooked meat, it didn't matter. They were scooping everything into plastic like scavengers. And Ethan, my son, my flesh and blood, stood beside them laughing, helping load the bags as if this were their right. Something in me snapped. I set down the tongs and walked over. What do you think you're doing? My voice cut through the air, sharper than I intended. Brooke blinked at me, feigning innocence. Oh, Linda, there's just so much food. We thought we'd take some home. Waste not, want not, right? 30 pounds of steak, I said, each word deliberate. Bought with my money. Prepared with my hands. And you walk out empty-handed, then try to leave with it all? This isn't generosity. This is theft. The guests fell silent. Forks paused midair. Conversations died. Brooke's cheeks flushed crimson, but not from shame, from anger at being exposed. The party ended abruptly. People left early, murmuring awkward goodbyes. Brooke and her mother stormed out, dragging Ethan behind them, bags still in hand. My carefully planned day crumbled into ashes. That night, alone in the kitchen with greasy pans piled high, I felt something curdle inside me. It wasn't just about steak. It was about respect or the lack of it. After that barbecue, I began noticing more. Strange envelopes in the mail addressed to Ethan. Letters from banks I didn't recognize. One afternoon, while tidying the study, I found a folder tucked carelessly into a drawer. Curiosity overpowered hesitation. I opened it. What I found made my hands tremble. Credit cards, 4 of them, all in Ethan's name. Statements with balances in the thousands. Shopping sprees in boutiques, high-end salons, hotel stays. Then worse, loan documents, some secured against my house. My house. The one I had bought and paid for long before Brooke entered our lives. And the signatures, Ethan's shaky scrawl, were clearly forged. Brooke's touch was all over it. I sat on the edge of my bed that night, papers spread around me like shards of glass. My son, my only child, tied to debts he hadn't even realized existed. My house leveraged without my knowledge. Tens of thousands already gone. The humiliation of servitude was one thing. But theft? Fraud? That was another war entirely. I could have confronted Ethan immediately, shoved the papers into his hands, demanded answers. But I knew what would happen. Brooke would spin her web. Ethan would defend her. And I would once again be painted as dramatic, unreasonable, ungrateful. So I chose silence, but this time a silence armed with teeth. The next morning I called a number I had kept in my drawer for years, given to me by a neighbor who once dealt with her cheating husband. A private investigator named Marcus Webb. He had a reputation for being discreet, thorough, and ruthless when necessary. When he answered, his voice was calm, professional. Mrs. Parker, what can I do for you? I hesitated, the words heavy. I need proof. Of debts. Of fraud. Of everything my daughter-in-law has done behind my back. He didn't sound surprised. You're not the first mother-in-law to call me. Don't worry, Mrs. Parker. It's game on. I hung up, my pulse racing. For the first time in years, I felt something like power returning to my veins. No more free labor. No more silent tears. No more stolen credit. The game had changed. And this time I wasn't playing to keep peace. I was playing to win. By the time December rolled in fully, the air around the lake smelled of pine and smoke, and the house was already trembling with Brooke's plans. She paraded through my living room with swatches of fabric, Pinterest boards on her phone, and long monologues about creating a magical atmosphere. I watched her pace, her high heels clicking on the floor I had polished the day before, her manicured hand waving in the air like a conductor. She was conducting me, or so she thought. Linda will need the gold tablecloths, the crystal glasses, and don't forget to polish the silverware this time. It looked dull last year. And for heaven's sake, get more candles. Ambience is everything. She didn't even look at me when she spoke. Her eyes were fixed on her reflection in the window, adjusting her hair, admiring herself. I nodded silent, but inside my plan was already taking shape. The more she demanded, the calmer I became. Because I had made my decision. I would not be here. Not for Christmas, not for her parade. Not for the humiliation of working myself into exhaustion while she basked in praise. I would leave. Quietly, deliberately, with no warning except the absence they would choke on. I booked a 2-week stay at a spa resort in the Appalachians, under my maiden name so they couldn't trace me easily. Not Nashville as I told them. Nashville was the cover story. The truth would be mine alone. Mornings of yoga, evenings of massages, silence broken only by the sound of water and my own breathing. The night before my departure, I moved through the house like a ghost, preparing not for their feast but for my escape. I emptied the pantry. Every sack of flour, every jar of sugar, every box of crackers gone. I donated most of it to the church food bank that very evening. I cleared the refrigerator until it hummed hollow, its shelves bare except for a single carton of eggs and half a lemon. I unlocked my cabinet, the one that held my china, crystal and holiday decor. One by one, I packed them into boxes and carried them into the locked attic. My ornaments, my heirlooms, the star that had topped our tree for 40 years, all out of reach. Let Brooke try to dazzle with plastic plates. The cleaning service I had paid for monthly? Cancelled. The delivery subscription I used to stock the pantry? Suspended. The house would not run itself without me. When dawn broke, the sky pale with frost, I left a note on the dining table. One line written in my firmest hand. Enjoy your perfect Christmas. I placed it neatly where Brooke's eyes would fall first, folded my suitcase into the trunk of my car, and drove away as the sun rose over the frozen lake. By 10:47 a.m., my phone exploded with calls. Brooke first, then Ethan, then both alternating, their voices vibrating through voicemail with disbelief. Where's the food? Where are the tablecloths? The decorations? Linda, what is this? I sipped my coffee on the balcony of the resort. The mountains spread before me in quiet majesty, and let the phone buzz unanswered. By evening, desperation had settled into their voices. Mom, please just tell us where you put the things. People are arriving tomorrow. Uncle Victor texted he's coming a day early. Brooke's in tears. You can't just leave us like this. But I could. And I had. That night, a message came not from Ethan, not from Brooke, but from Victor himself. Arriving tomorrow. Need to discuss important matters with the family. Important matters. I could guess what that meant. Investment, inheritance, opportunities, the kind of matters Brooke lived for. I typed my reply slowly, savoring each word. Brooke and Ethan will host you. I pictured her face when she read it. The panic. The dawning realization that her perfect showcase was already ashes. The next morning I lounged in a thick robe, sipping herbal tea as soft music played in the spa lounge. My phone buzzed again and again. Photos of half-filled carts at the grocery store, frantic texts about missing serving dishes, angry voicemails demanding to know why the tree decorations were gone. Meanwhile, I breathed in eucalyptus and let the tension leak from my body. For years I had sacrificed peace for duty. Now I discovered the opposite. By abandoning duty, I had found peace. They were left in the ruins of their own entitlement. And I finally was free. When I finally returned the next afternoon to check the voicemail I had ignored, the sound of chaos poured out of the tiny speaker like smoke from a burning house. There was shouting in the background of Ethan's voice message. Mom, call me back, please. Brooke's relatives are here, we're out of food, nothing is ready. They keep asking where everything is. Please just tell us where you stored the dishes. Brooke's panicking. Another voicemail from Brooke followed, her voice shrill and cracked, so unlike the polished tones she used with strangers. Linda, how could you do this to me? They're here. Do you understand? They're here. Uncle Victor, Aunt Carol, Jenna, everyone. And you've sabotaged everything. You're ruining Ethan's reputation, you're ruining my credibility. If you don't answer, I swear. The message cut off with the sound of someone grabbing the phone from her hand. The next one was from Jenna herself, Brooke's younger sister, her tone low and suspicious. Linda, it's Jenna. I don't know what's going on, but something isn't right here. Brooke told us you were handling everything, but there's no food, no decorations, nothing. And now people are whispering. Just call me back. I leaned back in my armchair at the spa, the voicemail still playing, and let a slow smile spread across my face. It had taken 5 years, but finally Brooke was the one scrambling, exposed before her own people. When Marcus, the investigator, called that evening, the timing was almost poetic. Mrs. Parker, he said, his voice steady as always, I've dug deeper into those accounts. You were right, the credit cards, the loans, they're all linked back to Brooke. Some in Ethan's name, some in yours, but her handwriting's all over the paperwork. She's been funneling money to cover shopping trips, salon visits, even payments on a secret lease in her name. And there's more, she's borrowed $20,000 from cousins, claiming you promised her the house in your will. That's outright fraud. I closed my eyes. For a moment the world tilted. $20,000. Promising away my house while I was still alive. Using my name as collateral for her illusions. It wasn't just exploitation. It was predation. Keep going, I told Marcus, my voice flat cold. Already on it. But you should know, the family's starting to turn on her. Word's spreading. Her uncle asked for bank statements today. She stammered something about delays. People are starting to see she's not the image she pretends to be. That night, while I dined quietly on roasted vegetables and soup in the resort dining room, Ethan and Brooke were serving pizza to 25 relatives in my house. Pizza. Boxes spread across the dining table where Brooke had dreamed of crystal and silver. Greasy cardboard where she had pictured golden turkeys and hand-painted china. I imagined the looks on their faces. Victor's raised eyebrow, Jenna's narrowed gaze, cousins murmuring to each other about the absence of food, the barren tree stripped of heirloom ornaments. The perfect Christmas Brooke had promised them was nothing but paper plates and melted cheese. And then came the real unraveling. Jenna, sharper than her sister, dug into the numbers. At first quietly, then more publicly. Brooke, I heard her voice later on a recording Marcus managed to obtain from a guest. Why did you tell us Linda was paying for everything when she clearly isn't? And what's this about loans? I found documents in Ethan's name. Explain this to me right now. Brooke tried to laugh it off. It's just small mistakes, bookkeeping errors. You know how these things go. But Jenna pressed harder. Bookkeeping errors don't explain multiple credit cards. Or why cousins are saying you owe them thousands. Or why Victor's name is on documents he never signed. Brooke, this isn't just messy. It looks like fraud. The word dropped like a stone into water. Fraud. Ethan Corner tried to step in. Let's not make a scene. It's Christmas. We can talk about this later. But his voice carried no conviction. He knew. Finally, he knew. By the time the night ended, support had dried up. The cousins wanted repayment. Victor demanded a full accounting. Scott, the real estate brother-in-law, abruptly withdrew from their business conversations. Brooke's empire, built on lies and stolen credit, had collapsed in one night. And Ethan, my son, saw at last that his wife's small mistakes weren't mistakes at all. They were a pattern, a life built on deception. I lay in my hotel bed that night, the soft sheets tucked around me, and listened again to the voicemails. Their voices no longer sounded commanding. They sounded desperate, panicked, defeated. For 5 years I had been invisible in my own home. But now, in my absence, my presence was undeniable. My silence had spoken louder than all my years of servitude, and it had left them choking on the truth. On Christmas Eve morning I drove slowly down the familiar road to the lake, frost crunching beneath the tires, the trees lining the shore heavy with ice. My house came into view, and for the first time in years I did not feel like a guest or a servant approaching it. I felt like its rightful owner returning to reclaim her ground. The porch was littered with half-dropped grocery bags, soda bottles rolling near the steps, a half-frozen turkey still in its plastic on the welcome mat. Inside I could hear raised voices, the scurry of footsteps, doors slamming. The stage was chaos. I stepped in carrying nothing but my purse. The living room was filled with people. Brooke sat collapsed on the sofa, no makeup, her eyes swollen and red. Ethan looked pale, sleepless, a shadow of the boy I had raised. Uncle Victor sat stiff in a chair, arms crossed, Jenna leaning beside him with a sharp, appraising look. Cousins hovered awkwardly near the doorway, whispering among themselves. And at precisely 10 o'clock, Daniel Price walked in behind me, his leather briefcase in hand. My attorney, my ally, my line in the sand. He greeted the room politely, then set the briefcase on the coffee table with deliberate care. The sound of the locks clicking open seemed louder than all the chatter. Papers, contracts, and affidavits spread across the polished wood like cards in a high-stakes game. Let's begin, he said. His voice was calm, steady, unyielding. Brooke tried to speak first. This isn't necessary, Linda. I raised my hand and cut her off. My voice was sharper than she had ever heard from me. No, Brooke. For 5 years I stayed silent. Today I will be heard. The room fell still. Even Ethan, who had once flinched whenever conflict arose, looked at me and said nothing. Daniel began. Mrs. Parker has instructed me to take the following legal steps. First, her house is being moved into a trust. From this day forward, it cannot be sold, mortgaged, or leveraged without her direct consent. Any attempt to do so will constitute fraud, punishable by law. Gasps rippled through the room. I saw Brooke's face drain of color, her mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from water. Second, Daniel continued, we have documented 5 years of unpaid labor provided by Mrs. Parker under coercion, housework, meal preparation, hosting of guests, all while others took the credit. This establishes a clear pattern of exploitation. I stepped forward then, laying out the folder Marcus had prepared. Credit card statements, loan documents, copies of forged signatures. These, I said, my voice steady, are accounts opened in Ethan's name without his knowledge. These are loans taken against my house. These are luxury purchases made while debts piled higher and higher. And these, I held up a page, are notes from cousins and extended family, listing the $20,000 Brooke borrowed while claiming I had promised her this house in my will. The silence that followed was suffocating. For the first time, Brooke had no ready smile, no quick excuse. She sat rigid, staring at the papers as if they were weapons aimed directly at her. And they were. Victor leaned forward, his voice gravelly. Is this true, Brooke? She stammered. They're exaggerating. Linda always said she wanted Ethan taken care of. These were just small mistakes, temporary fixes. Everyone borrows sometimes. Not like this, Jenna cut in sharply. Not with forged signatures. Not by lying about inheritance. Brooke, you lied to me. You lied to everyone in this room. Ethan finally spoke, his voice raw. Is it true? Did you sign these loans against my name? Brooke turned to him, desperate. Ethan, listen, I did it for us. For the life we deserve. Your mother wouldn't support us forever, you know that. I was just building our future. Our future, he spat, his voice louder than I had heard in years. You buried us in debt. You used my name. You risked my mother's house. You lied to me every day. I looked at my son then. For the first time, I saw the boy who had once clung to me in the dark when nightmares came. The boy who once swore he would protect me when he grew strong enough. And now, finally, the man he had become was beginning to see. Daniel closed his briefcase, his point made. This is the situation. From this day, the trust protects the property. Repayment demands have been documented. And further legal action is on the table should this behavior continue. Mrs. Parker will not be silenced again. I stood, straightened my shoulders, and faced the room. For 5 years, I was treated as staff in my own home. I cooked, cleaned, worked myself to exhaustion while Brooke smiled and accepted the praise. I kept quiet for the sake of family peace. But family without respect is fraud. And I will not be part of fraud anymore. I turned to Ethan. You must decide who you are. A man who ignores abuse, or one who defends respect. Then to Brooke. You will repay the loans. You will apologize to those you deceived. And you will live within your means. If not, I will see you in court. The room was frozen, every eye locked on me. For the first time, Brooke had nothing to say. Her painted image had cracked beyond repair. And for the first time in years, I stood not as their servant, but as the owner of my house, my life, and my dignity. The silence after my words was the kind that rings in the ears. The kind that makes people fidget, shift in their chairs, look anywhere but at the truth in front of them. I had just told Brooke she would repay, apologize, and learn to live within her means, or face court. I had told Ethan he must choose what kind of man he wanted to be. And now the living room was thick with the weight of consequences. Brooke tried first because she always did. She leaned forward on the sofa, her swollen eyes flashing with a new tactic, pity. Linda, she began, her voice trembling. I know I made mistakes, but you don't understand the pressure I've been under. Ethan's business isn't stable, our apartment plans fell through, and everyone expects us to have the perfect life. I was just trying to hold it all together. Can't you forgive me just this once? For family's sake? Her tone softened, her shoulders hunched, her mascara smudged to play the part of the overwhelmed daughter-in-law. But I had seen the real face too many times to be fooled. No, I said flatly. Not this time. Forgiveness without accountability is permission. And I'm done giving permission. Victor, who had been silent until now, gave a low grunt of approval. His weathered hands clasped together, his eyes fixed on Brooke. Your mother-in-law's right. I came here expecting a family Christmas. What I found is chaos and lies. You won't see $1 from me until you clean up this mess, legally and personally. Brooke flinched as though struck. Her eyes darted to Scott, her brother-in-law, the real estate man she had pinned so many hopes on. But Scott only shook his head, a cold smile playing at his lips. I don't do business with liars. Especially not liars who can't keep their own finances straight. The cousins exchanged looks, whispers rippling through the room. One of them, a tall man in his 40s whose name I barely knew, spoke up sharply. Where's our $20,000, Brooke? You said it was secure. You said Linda had promised you the house. All eyes turned to me. I raised my chin. A lie, I said simply. I never promised her anything. This house is mine and it will stay mine. The only thing Brooke promised was repayment. You'll get your money back when she honors it. Until then, stop looking at me. The man's face darkened. Then she scammed us. Yes, I answered, my voice like a blade. She did. Brooke's facade cracked. Tears streamed down her face, but they weren't the tears of guilt. They were the tears of exposure. Ethan sat with his head in his hands, silent, rocking slightly as if the weight of truth was pressing him into the sofa. I looked at him, my son, my only child, and for a moment my heart ached. But pity is dangerous when facing betrayal. Ethan, I said, my voice quieter now but no less firm. I carried you through storms. I gave you everything I could and more than I had. And this is what you've allowed. My years turned into servitude, my name tied to debt, my house used as collateral. You chose silence while your wife built her lies. Now you must choose again. Who are you? A man who stands by abuse or a man who finally stands for respect? He lifted his face slowly, his eyes rimmed red. He opened his mouth, closed it, then whispered, I don't know. It broke something in me to hear those words. Not anger, something colder. A realization that perhaps he never would know. Then let me make it simple, I said, standing straighter, my hands gripping the back of the chair. In this house there are rules now. Non-negotiable. Boundaries carved in stone. You don't walk in uninvited. You don't demand my labor. You don't borrow my money. You don't touch my credit. You don't speak my name in your lies. Break any of these and the law will speak for me. My attorney, Daniel Price, nodded approvingly, sliding a fresh set of papers across the table. We've filed notice of these terms. They're not requests, they're binding. Any violation becomes actionable. The room stirred. Cousins glanced at one another, already calculating their distance from Brooke. Jenna leaned back, folding her arms, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Her sister had finally been unmasked. Brooke rose suddenly, pacing like a caged animal. This isn't fair. You're all turning against me. You've always envied me. My looks, my ambitions, my plans. And now you're ganging up, using Linda as your excuse. Her voice rose to a shriek, but no one moved to calm her. Not even Ethan. Victor's gravelly voice cut her off like a gavel. Enough. You've been playing us all for fools. Don't expect a cent more from me. I won't invest in lies. And if you try dragging this family name into more debt, I'll personally see to it you're exposed in every circle you've ever tried to climb. Brooke froze, her face blotchy, her fists clenched. For the first time, I saw true fear replace her arrogance. Jenna spoke next, her tone icy. Apologize, Brooke. To Linda. To Ethan. To everyone here. You owe us that at the very least. But Brooke stayed silent, her lips pressed tight, her pride strangling her better judgment. I didn't press her. I no longer needed her words. I had my rules, my trust, my documents. I had drawn the line. I looked around the room, my gaze steady. This house, once a stage for Brooke's illusions, is mine again. It will never be her theater. I gave too freely for too long and was repaid with humiliation. No more. Generosity will now be tied to gratitude. Labor will only be given where there is respect. And silence, the silence that enabled all of this, is finished. The air seemed to shift with my declaration. Some relatives nodded subtly, others avoided my gaze, embarrassed by their own earlier complicity. But one thing was certain. No one saw me as invisible anymore. Ethan lowered his head. His voice so faint I almost didn't hear it. I should have seen it years ago. Yes, I said, my tone flat. You should have. And with those words, the boy I had raised, the man who had disappointed me, sat in the rubble of his wife's lies, finally realizing that blindness is also betrayal. The rest of Christmas Eve unfolded not like a holiday, but like a trial that refused to adjourn. From morning until night, the house that had once been Brooke's stage became the arena of her unraveling. After I set the boundaries, rules carved in stone, the relatives shifted uneasily in their seats. Some wanted to leave immediately, disgusted by what they had witnessed. Others lingered, curious, unable to turn away from the spectacle. It was like watching a storm tear a house apart. Terrifying but impossible not to see through to the end. Brooke began the day with tears. Real or rehearsed, it was hard to tell. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking, her voice breaking into choked sobs. I just wanted to give Ethan the life he deserves. I just wanted to impress my family. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Her mascara smeared down her cheeks, her red dress wrinkled from hours of pacing. She looked nothing like the polished woman who once strutted through this living room issuing commands. But I felt nothing for her tears. I had shed enough of my own over 5 silent years. When tears didn't soften us, she turned to rage. She leapt from the sofa, pointed at me with trembling hands and shouted, "You've always hated me, Linda. Admit it. You never accepted me, and this is your revenge. You're jealous because Ethan chose me, not you. That's why you're trying to destroy us now." Her voice cracked, high and shrill, reverberating off the walls. Some cousins gasped, others shook their heads. I stood calmly, my hands folded in front of me. Jealousy doesn't open fraudulent credit cards, Brooke. Jealousy doesn't forge signatures, or borrow money with lies, or treat a woman like free staff in her own home. Don't mistake exposure for revenge. This is simply the truth. The words landed like stones. She faltered, then collapsed back onto the sofa, her anger spent. But like all manipulators, she wasn't done. She cycled through every mask she owned. When rage failed, she tried reason. Maybe I went too far. Maybe I was reckless. But Linda, think of the family name. Think of Ethan. If this becomes public, it'll ruin him. It'll ruin all of us. Can't we just bury this? For everyone's sake? Victor's booming laugh cut her off. Bury it? Brooke, you buried yourself. Don't you dare drag us into your grave. You've already ruined the family name with your greed. The cousins murmured agreement. Jenna smirked openly, watching her sister's performance crumble. Brooke's voice rose again, desperate. Ethan, say something. Tell them this is all exaggerated. Tell them your mother's overreacting. Ethan's hands were clenched in his lap. He looked at her, then at me, then at the floor. His voice came out flat, hollow. I can't. Not anymore. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. All afternoon, the house remained in turmoil. Relatives argued in the kitchen, voices rising. Some demanded their money back immediately. Others debated whether to stay or go. Children cried from the tension, their mothers hushing them with promises of "we'll leave soon." By evening, pizza boxes and paper plates still cluttered the dining table, greasy reminders of Brooke's failure to produce her perfect feast. I sat calmly in my chair, drinking tea while the chaos swirled around me. For once, I was not the one scrambling to serve, to smooth over, to clean. I watched. I listened. And I waited. At 7 o'clock, Uncle Victor rose to leave. He pulled on his heavy coat, his face set in stone. I came here to see family. What I saw was fraud, lies, and disgrace. I won't be part of it any longer. Brooke, don't call me again until every debt is repaid. And even then, don't expect kindness. He left without another word. Several cousins followed, muttering under their breath. One slammed the door so hard the ornaments rattled on the bare tree. Those who remained stayed only out of morbid fascination, their eyes darting between Brooke's collapse and my calm. By 9 o'clock, Brooke had shifted again, this time to please. She knelt in front of Ethan, clutching his hands, sobbing into his lap. Please don't let her take everything from us. Don't let her ruin us. I did it for us. For you. Can't you see that? Ethan stared at her blankly. He didn't touch her. He didn't comfort her. His silence was more devastating than my words. Finally he whispered, "You didn't do it for me. You did it for yourself. Brooke wailed, throwing herself onto the carpet, her sobs echoing down the hall. But no one moved to console her. Not even her own sister. By midnight, the crowd had thinned. Half the relatives had gone, disgusted. The others lingered like witnesses waiting for a verdict. And in that final hour of the longest day, I stood once more and spoke the words that sealed it all. Family without respect is not family. It is a fraud. Tonight the fraud has ended. From now on, my generosity will be tied to gratitude. My labor will only be given where respect lives. My house will never again be a stage for lies. The room was quiet. Even Brooke's sobs fell silent. I looked at each face in turn. You've all seen the truth today. You can choose whether to believe her excuses, or whether to believe your own eyes. But I am done. My silence has ended, and my boundaries are carved in stone. Then I turned and walked to my room, leaving them all in the ruins of their illusions. Behind me, I heard nothing but the sound of Ethan's voice, breaking softly in the dark. She was right. All these years she was right. And with that, the longest day of my life finally ended. Not in peace but in clarity. By the time dawn touched the lake with pale light, the house was silent again. The kind of silence that comes not from peace but from exhaustion. Some relatives had left in anger, their cars crunching down the frozen driveway in the night. Others slept uneasily on couches and guest beds, their whispers lingering like smoke in the walls. I rose early as I always had. For decades I had woken before anyone else, grinding coffee, setting tables, preparing breakfasts no one thanked me for. But that morning I brewed a single cup for myself and sat by the window, watching the mist rise off the water. For the first time in years I did not move with urgency. I did not exist for anyone else's needs. At 8 o'clock, voices stirred in the hallway. Jenna entered the kitchen cautiously, her coat already on, her car keys in her hand. She looked at me, then glanced at the bare counters, the empty fridge. I should head out, she said quietly. But Linda, for what it's worth, you were right to do this. I thought you were just stubborn, but now, I see it. All of it. Her eyes softened. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, I replied, and for once I meant it. One by one the others departed, cousins muttering about wasted money, children whining from hunger, husbands glaring at Brooke as if she had infected them with shame. By noon only a handful remained. Victor, stern and immovable, 2 cousins who had quietly sided with me, and of course Ethan and Brooke. The tree still stood in the corner, stripped of heirlooms, its bare branches drooping under cheap lights Brooke had bought at the last minute. The dining table was littered with cold pizza crusts, half-empty soda cans, and a few unopened bags of chips. I stood at the head of the table and cleared my throat. There will still be a Christmas meal today, but it will be small, modest, real. Anyone who values honesty and respect is welcome to stay. The rest may leave. Victor nodded immediately. I'll stay. The cousins exchanged a look, then nodded too. Brooke's head snapped up. Her voice was sharp, panicked. You can't just hijack my holiday, Linda. This was supposed to be my Christmas. My family. My show. I met her eyes, unblinking. Your show is over. If you want to leave, the door is open. Her mouth worked soundlessly. She looked at Ethan for rescue, but he only stared down at the table, his hands limp in his lap. So I began. I opened my pantry, or what was left of it after I'd locked away the fine things, and took out flour, sugar, and yeast I had kept in a separate box. From the freezer I pulled chicken legs I had hidden away. From the garden outside, I clipped sprigs of rosemary that had survived the frost. It wasn't a feast, but it was enough. As I worked, the room shifted. Victor rolled up his sleeves and helped peel potatoes. One cousin set the table with mismatched plates and cups. Another chopped vegetables while humming softly. The air filled not with Brooke's frantic orders, but with the steady rhythm of genuine cooperation. By 2 o'clock, the table held roasted chicken, simple bread, mashed potatoes, and a small apple pie I had managed from scratch. Nothing fancy, nothing for show. But it was ours, honest and hard-earned. We sat together, those who remained. Victor offered grace. Not grand, not polished, but heartfelt. And for the first time in years, I tasted food I had made not as a servant, but as a woman reclaiming her place. Brooke sat stiff in her chair, untouched plate before her. She refused to eat, her eyes burning holes into me. Finally, she burst out, her voice cracking. This isn't fair. You're turning everyone against me. You've ruined everything. Victor slammed his fork down. No, Brooke. You ruined yourself. Stop blaming Linda. Stop blaming anyone. Own your mess. Her face flushed. She looked to Ethan again, desperation in her eyes. Ethan, say something. Stand up for me. He lifted his head slowly, his voice hoarse. Stand up for what? You lied to me. You lied to everyone. You dragged my mother through hell. And I let you. I was blind. Tears filled his eyes, but he didn't look at her. He looked at me. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have seen it years ago. I should have defended you. The words were a salve and a wound at once. They came too late to heal, but they acknowledged what had been stolen. I nodded, my throat tight, and said, better late than never. Brooke pushed back her chair violently. You're all against me. Fine. I'll go. But don't think this is over. You'll regret humiliating me like this, Linda. You'll regret it. She stormed out, her heels clattering on the hardwood. The slam of the front door echoing like a closing chapter. The room exhaled. The tension broke. And at last we ate in peace. After the meal, I stepped out onto the porch, the winter air biting my cheeks. I breathed deeply, the cold filling my lungs, sharper and cleaner than any air I'd tasted in years. Inside, voices hummed low, dishes clattered gently. Not orders, not commands, but people simply helping each other. I stood there a long time, watching the lake shimmer under the pale sun, and thought, this is mine again. My house. My air. My life. For the first time in 5 years, I was not a maid. I was the owner. I was free. And as I closed my eyes, letting the wind sting my skin, I whispered the words that had carried me here. Enough.